Zasado.
Alright, let's talk about my favorite standard deck, that being of course Orfist. I took this list to Orange's Series tournament and I managed to win, but huge disclaimer, this is the most glassiest cannon you will ever touch. Now the list itself worked fine, I bricked here and there, but there will be probably some changes, and which one we'll get to later. Now let's go over the list real quick so we can talk about the more in-depth stuff. Starting of course with our right line. We play one Orfist, one Kubisa for our grade 2 game, which I will come to later, one Rutis and one Fovi. Now, I know a lot of people play like Eva, Arcade or whatever other Brandgate starter there is, but remember you're playing Orfist, you have nothing to hide, so you play Fovi. Coming to our orders, which are the core mechanic of the deck, we have 3 Overcoming Eternity. You want your tokens to gain the 5k, so you play 4. 3 Howling Moonlight Knight. You want to draw cards because Orfist barely has any. And 2 Eclipse Moonlight because you want to spawn a token, of course, the grade 2, ideally. And you might need an additional one if you struggle to build a field. So 2 is fine in my opinion. Now for the grade 3s. 3 Persona Rights, right? Nothing else to add. 4 Nuvarias. Gains 2k per order you have set up. If it dies by calling over it, for example, you gain a token. 4 off, of course. And 2 Abend Robust. Abend Robust I was trying out because obviously finding orders is good, but searching for them is even better. And if you struggle with Orfist because you're kinda bricked, he can easily unbrick you by finding another order. Hence why I'm playing also 2 Eclipse Moonlight, so you always have a target with him if your hand is really bad. Also, he will hit for 23k if you have 2 matching orders in your order zone, which is pretty easy in this deck, and has no restriction of your opponent being grade 3. Common Russia does, so I run him over Common Russia now. Our grade 2s, we have 3 Penguins. I used Tactian once during the tournament and whiffed, so we'll come back to this card later when we talk about the changes. Pantai Dragon. Pantai Dragon is another card I was trying out because I want to have a strong grade 2 game. And looking back, I probably would have run more, but if you're on grade 2, this unit is pretty good. So +1, you draw a card, you ditch a card, and he gains 5k if you have an order set up, which you almost always have. 3 Kagura, Orfist promo, pretty good card. This build is a little bit more soul hungry than previous iterations, so 3 of her is pretty good. Soul Judging 2, even 1, can be very handy. And our PG package. Now real quick for the triggers. We are playing 4 of the draw triggers with effect and 1 singular non-effect draw trigger. Why? As I said, Orfist has like no hand and you need to see your pieces, so just run more draw triggers. It helps you out. Sure, you lose out on crit pressure, but still, I think 6 crit triggers are plenty pressure. Either way, I think you're better off drawing the cards than trying for the crit pressure. And the next one is also like personal preference. We have 3 normal heals and 1 effect heal. In this case the crit one because of Eva Hell, and as I said in my youth book list, it comes down to preference. Whatever you like, whatever the meta is at your locals for example, you will just adapt the heal triggers accordingly. And finally you play a good overtrigger, the Brandgate one. Okay, if you look at this deck, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Exactly. You have like 0 guard value. The guard value in this deck is all triggers and nothing else, but basically nothing else. Because Tactian is a discard fodder, Panther High Dragon and Kagura are like pieces you do not want to drop that easily, so you can have a hand of 6+ cards and no guard value. It sucks, but this is why this deck is like very aggressive, and this is why it is a glass cannon. Having played a tournament now, there are some things you can change, and I definitely will. We start first with the Penguin. The Penguin sounds good because you can discard him and basically make your card back, +1ing essentially since you ride. But if you whiff, it feels very bad, and I play 3, so I have more discard fodder for riding, Regis skill and Panther High skill, but it never really came up. Everything kind of worked out without him. So why not cut Tactian for more aggressive cards? For example, Tamburino. Drop her grade 1, drop her grade 2 with the token, so you can't get damage denied if you swing with the effect. She also lets you dig deep into the deck, so this is a very strong contender. Or the good old reliable Combat Rusher, of course. 2, 3 is fine. If you see him drop and have access Counterblast, get him out and swing face. Personally, I would probably bump Panther High Dragon up to 3 and put 2 more Tamburinos in. So we'll basically look like this. But if you prefer having Tactians in your deck, that's also fine. Now there would be other examples, what you could put in, for example, Kulja Meat. But since we're entering Chronojet meta, and Chronojet can easily spin cards back, you would want to have your cards to have an impact when you call them, and you're getting all the value you can during your turn. Kulja Meat can intercept from the back row with additional shield, so you only get half his benefits if you call him to boost for 10k, and boosting is not really required since you call shadow tokens anyways. So I would probably stick to either Tamburino or Combat Rusher in this case. Another point I need to address, and it has the same reasoning as the Enucleate Angel in Orfist in Youthberg. I ran Boberman in this deck, but you don't really need to, because you have approximately 5 Counterblast available to you per game, and these 5 are plenty enough to finish the game out, either by you killing your opponent or you dying. Now, that doesn't mean like use every available Counterblast to you immediately. It just means you need to map your turns out a little bit. This deck will try to kill on its first Persona Ride. This is what you want to aim for if you play Orfist. The first Persona Ride needs to be lethal. You can be lethal on your first grade 3 turn, that is absolutely possible, but most of the time you will have 2 to 3 orders on your first grade 3 turn, and after that, if you Persona Ride, you should at least manage 4, which means you can call 2 tokens, which means your Vanguard hits for 33,000, and it should be easier to close out the game, except for example if your opponent has like 4 PGs in hand, but it's not that likely. So if you go by that you try to finish on your first Persona Ride, it gets easier mapping out your Counterblast to use. Now let's talk a little bit more about our grade 2 game. Now this is the setup. You just started your grade 2 turn, assuming you went first for example now, and you rode up to grade 2, you took a damage. You will probably call down your Eclipse Moonlight, you will Counterblast and summon a token. Since you used the order and placed it in your order zone, the token will gain 5k, or any unit essentially, but you give it to the token, because now the token hits for 20k and will hit over defensive triggers. Next, you might have found a Panther High Dragon. You will Soul Blast 1, draw 1, discard 1, and Panther High Dragon will also gain 5k. In the best case scenario, you might even have a Kagura, which you can call over here to boost the Vanguard, or call over here to boost Panther High Dragon, so Panther High Dragon also hits over 20, but if you don't have her, these columns are already very fine for an aggressive second turn. Now, if your opponent is Chrono Jet, you went first, and Chrono Jet just finished its second turn. If you have a damage, you can activate Eclipse Moonlight again. If you do not have a damage, you can activate Hollowing Moonlight, drawing your card. The important thing is that if you have two orders in your order zone, it becomes Abyssal Dark Knight. And it being Abyssal Dark Knight makes Kagula infinitely better, because you call her, you can Soul Charge 2, you don't have to, but Soul Blasting 1 and retiring her turns her into another Shadow Army token. Which means your second grade 2 turn is also very aggressive. This way you can still apply a lot of pressure, even though you're still grade 2, and Chrono Jet will probably have to ride up, because there's no point in not riding up, but the riding up and not being able to stride makes the deck less threatening. So if Chrono Jet rides up and swings into you again, either you take the damage and have Counterblast to Regis, or Chrono Jet tries to clear your field, but loses a little bit more tempo in this case, and you have more damage to play around with when Chrono Jet eventually strides. At least this is the impression I have now from the Chrono Jet matchup. It obviously depends if you find your pieces and how sacky the early game is, but usually this is what I try to do against Chrono Jet. And if the deck set finally comes out, we'll see how it works out. Against every other deck, obviously you just follow the standard path, riding up, trying to smack face, and applying pressure this way. Now, I hope you enjoyed this little insight into Orfist. It is, after all, my favorite deck, and I not only enjoy the artwork very much, but also the playstyle. It being a glass cannon, the glassiest of cannon, can be frustrating, but if you build this deck, I hope you have as much fun as I do. I will probably make a short update for set 9, because we probably will try to fit in the Persona Right Searcher, but I'm not sure how for now. Other than that, thank you for watching, and see you around.